maybe not. Hey, wow. Had a bit of a delay there as we started this little episode there. My screen disappeared. It was like, and it's just like, where did I go? Where did everybody go? Anyway, sorry. Welcome to Underlords Universe. This is a place where we like to chit chat about all the stuff that inspires us to be creative in our own right. Brent, or excuse me, Deep Freeze down below. He and I are involved in a project called Underlords of the Overworld, which is why our channel here is called the Underlords Universe. And we have our honorary Underlord, Travis, aka Skull, from across the state, joining us today. And one of the things that's been a big inspiration to us is Judas Priest. And we're here to discuss the new remix of Judas Priest's debut album, Rocka Rolla. Rot there. That's what it looks like. So, if you guys don't mind, if you would indulge me, just I want to make an opening comment about this and then use it as a segue to get your guys' take on this, okay? So, first of all, I feel vindicated by this remix. Um, I don't remember exactly when it was, maybe a year or so ago. Martin Popoff, and anybody who knows anything about music stuff knows who Martin Popoff is. You know, the writer, journalist, cool guy, writes great books. I got a bunch of his books back here. He posted something a while back on his Facebook page about Rocka Rolla. I think maybe they had done a Contrarians episode or something. And I just made a comment, as I rarely do, but I did. I made a comment about Rocka Rolla. I actually have always kind of preferred it to Sad Wings of Destiny. And he responded to me saying something like, "Said only Brian ever," you know.
Oh man.
It's like like the consensus is Sad Wings of Destiny is a this metal classic, which of course, okay, it is fine. I don't argue that. But that it was almost unheard of that anybody would even put Rolla anywhere near that. Now, did the original mix, a little dead sounding, a little dull, lifeless, sure. I always liked the record a lot, always. Now, we haven't applied our rating system to the Judas Priest catalog yet. I think at some point we will. Brent, I'm guessing you're probably interested in that at some point. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
But uh I have not stopped spinning this remix since it came out. I mean, this is this rivals, I think, the remix of Black Sabbath's um Forbidden album.
It does.
I'm thinking. Um
And
so
I think I made a comment to you. We just briefly exchanged a couple words about it, and it was like, you know, they basically said if we're going to remix this, let's remix the hell out of it.
mhm.
And it breathed entirely new life. But like you, I always liked the album too. I have a few kind of different takes on it and where it stands as far as recent history, where it stands now, and whatever. But this is how you remix something. And I think I mentioned it when we did the Forbidden episode, but it's like remixes, it used to be like, hey, we got a new remix. And it's like, okay, sounds a little different. I guess that's, for the hardcore fan, that's kind of nice to listen to. But this sounds like I don't want to say a new record, but I mean the drums, I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. But like John Hinch, I was like, I didn't know John Hinch was such a great drummer. Like his, I mean, not that he was like, Scott Travis all over the place, but I'm listening to stuff. I'm going, did that just never click because the drum sounded so crappy before? But he was drumming exactly what he needed to. He was doing interesting things, not just your basic
Mhm.
stuff. Anyway, but
Well, I think to that point, just a better mix draws your ears to things that you didn't necessarily have your ears drawn to in the first place. It's not like you didn't notice or didn't hear something. You were just hearing it slightly differently. Um, and that's, because of the way things are EQ'd and balanced. And I noticed just for a simple example, some of the guitar panning is different. in terms of, like where they are in terms of left and right. But and you mentioned the drums. I do want to say this. I do think that the very first and One for the Road, I think that the snare is actually a little too reverby. I think it's got a little bit too much reverb on the snare on One for the Road. Other than that, I don't find any fault with with it really. I think maybe not enough reverb on the snare on Never Satisfied. So I kind of went back and forth between One for the Road and Never Satisfied, and there's to my ear, a pretty significant difference in the snare on those things. But my guess is that Tom Allom is kind of not necessarily playing for consistency across the board, but rather like what's the right for each song. And there's room for a little bit of disagreement here, but I mean I'm nitpicking. That's nitpicking. I love this remix. I think it sounds fantastic. Brent?
I agree. It blows me away. It's like it's a new record, and to think this is 50 years old is crazy. Um,
Yeah.
Kind of Travis's point. I'm hearing things that I never heard before. If I did, I didn't really know that I was hearing them. Like for example, in the upbeat part, the ending part of "Dying to Meet You,"
Hmm.
there's a guitar part that I never heard before. Um, the three chords that come in during the galloping guitar part, I don't know that I've ever heard that before. So maybe there are parts that were there that they tracked, but they were buried in the mix
Uh-huh.
or not
Yeah.
in the mix. And so I'm hearing things for the first time that I think I'm hearing for the first time,
Yeah.
probably.
So
Um, it just
so to
sounds it just sounds more lively. And the first album has always to me sounded very dull, gray, dense, dark, which is fine. This album is energetic, and the differences between the black and white, the light and the shade, are better now because everything is more vibrant, and it's just the guitars sound better. Everything sounds better. The guitars have a crunch to them. They
Yeah.
didn't really have that before. I don't know. It's just it's mind blowing how good this is.
Can you,
It's
okay, to that point, I always thought, and maybe I was gonna say, okay, I always thought the guitars and the overall tone of the record sounded cold. And
yes.
that might be influenced by the fact that you have, Winter and Deep Freeze, as titles on the album. It doesn't hurt to have that to kind of, get your mind in that direction. But I just feel like it just sounded cold and dark. I think it still sounds cold and dark, but like you said, vibrant. It has a vibrancy that it didn't have before.
Yeah, and to my ear, it's also heavier now. It's like
Yeah, big time.
it's very Sabbathy. A lot of the because it's not a very up tempo record, so it's very plodding and kind of almost like doom metal. But I think the slow and ploddy guitar parts are even heavier now because of the better mix and the better production.
Didn't Roger Payne produce it?
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
Okay, so I mean there is a bit of a because he
Sabbath
did,
connection.
yeah, right.
It and, it's,
Um,
and of course it's very it's very much a KK album since Glenn kind of came in at the tail end of getting ready to record the
uh,
record. So a lot of it is KK stuff, and maybe that has something to do with it. I
I
think
And
I'm going to make one.
it's sorry, go ahead.
I was going to make one comment about the leads because Priest would really develop into being the twin lead attack as they got further into their career. But I'm going to go on record now and say that the KK's lead on the end of Dying to Meet You is it's phenomenal, especially the way it sits in this mix, the way the album sounds now. I can listen to that over and over and over and over again and not get tired of it. It's
yeah,
incredible. I love it.
Travis.
Well, it's not just a KK record though. It is in some ways an Al Atkins record
Hmm.
Yeah,
because you keep seeing this, and I think he even had one or two on Sad Wings of Destiny.
Hmm.
But he has writing credits all over here, and that actually kind of leads me to another point here. Now, when I first got this, first of all, this was hard as hell to track down. This is the original copy I got. with the original cover. And I've always been big into like debuts. If I get into a band, like, well, believe it or not, 98 Live Meltdown was the first Judas Priest album I got. Uh,
Hmm.
but, then I go back and it's like, okay, well, British Steel is available. That's the big one I'm going to get. And I'm like, but I want to hear their debut. I couldn't find it. And then I finally found it and it didn't have the original cover. I'm like, no, no, no. You're not going to change the cover on me. I want the original cover. I want to see like the history. Where did they come from? A weird little Coca-Cola, thing. And so I finally get it. I love it. And then this mysterious Al Atkins guy. And then I had an
Mysterious.
equally so mysterious, an equally dubious task, if not worse, to find an Al Atkins record and how it stacks up. And I finally was able to track down this.
Brent, you have that.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't
yep.
have it, but Brent has it. Yep.
And I gotta say, guys,
Pretty good.
um, in fact, I think there's about four crossover songs on here. There's also Victim of Changes, which I thought it's kind of weird to call it Victim of Changes when it's like, well, you didn't write that. You wrote Whiskey Woman. And then later on, they tacked on Red Light Lady. And I was like, so what's he going for? It's like, well, I'm a victim of having to take care of my family. No, what it
Hmm.
was just the small record company was like, no, we're going to sell more if we do this. Hey, and here's a cover. And he hated this cover and, rip
Well,
off of
it's
Sin
kind of
After
like a
Sin.
takeoff of Sin After Sin.
Yeah, and he hated that. I've got
I'm
his
sure.
biography. He talks about that. But um, the recording here is excellent. The drums, Dave Holland, somehow they make the drums sound huge on here.
Mm.
He's got an amazing drum sound. It's got a little bit more of a groove than you're used to, whatever. But the point I'm getting at is, yeah, I always loved this, but the recording was not great. Now,
Yeah.
I'll push through a bad recording, but when I have a better record, if that's all I have, but when I have a better recording available, this was always kind of my go-to if I wanted to listen to Never Satisfied, Winter, not necessarily Victim of Changes, but I do like his version here. I'm
Mhm.
trying to think and then Caviar and Mess. It's only 2 minutes something on this
Right.
one. They used to do a 15-minute epic in concert when he was in Judas Priest. It's only about 7 minutes here, but they really did a disservice by, not that it's like one of the greatest songs in Priest's catalog, but that would have been an amazing way to end this.
So,
Go ahead.
so if I'm hearing you right, if I'm hearing you correctly, you were a fan of the debut, but
Big time, yeah.
sonically, because of the Al Atkins album, if you wanted to hear those songs, you went to those versions more than, and I'm guessing this remix now completely shakes that balance up, right?
It does. And I don't know where I'm at. I was driving around listening to both and going, I'm probably going to have to answer for that when we do this conversation. And I honestly don't know. I still was like, listening to this and going, I still kind of like the groove behind it. Al Atkins, if anybody is not familiar, he sounds nothing like Rob Halford. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, nothing. He's got a gravelly voice and he's sick, but he's a good vocalist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's like, but here's the problem. Okay. Never Satisfied, huge improvements, huge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nearly at least on par, if not better than the Al Atkins version. However, Winter is a trimmed down version on this one compared to Al Atkins' version. It's got that minute long intro and kind of. I'm so used to hearing just go right to that badass riff, you know.
Oh,
So I think Al Atkins is going to win that one. Caviar and Meths. Al Atkins is going to win that one. And okay, I think those are the main ones. But overall, I actually find this a more consistent record. Now,
interesting.
this is where,
Interesting. Because
yeah,
okay. Now,
because when we get to side two
hmm
on here, Never Satisfied, awesome. And then I'm kind of not interested in the rest. But it sounds like you guys are into the last
you know
three
what?
tracks.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh,
um I and I Brent and I Travis, I know you have a little bit of a different vibe when it comes to the rating and ranking albums and stuff. But Brent, I'm interested in maybe delving into the Priest catalog from a ranking standpoint because I listened to this remix probably 7 or 8 times over the last few days, and I made myself listen to Sad Wings of Destiny, and I'm like, I'd really like to try to put our rating system to the test here because I have always maintained that Rocka Rolla edges out Sad Wings as a consistent record start to finish. And I'd like to know where all that lands because even my old version, the pre-remix version, the original mix of the album, which Travis, you hate that cover. Um,
I
but
think the changing history aspect, I don't know if they would have had, you know,
yeah,
uh, if Dying to Meet You was about this monster that was or something or rather, and that
yeah,
was it. I'd be like, okay, I can get behind that.
sure.
But
But
totally just a ploy to
because
make it fit with Screaming for Vengeance and this and that. But
well, but to my point, in terms of the sonics of the album, um, I never had a real problem with this. I liked it. It's just that this is so much better. Um,
So here's a
Now,
question.
yeah, go ahead.
So when we get around to doing that, are we going to grade Rock-a-Rolla based on the remix or on the original mix? Because it's going to be different. I'm,
Well, you do it how you want to do it, because, I mean, you have the option. To me, I, 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 I wouldn't rate the songs any differently just because they sound better. I,
um,
I
I might
wouldn't.
with a couple because there's a couple things that stand out quite a bit, but I'll have to think about how I want to do that. But
Yeah.
I mean, it
Well,
looks like
I would say this. This is out. This is available. Use it.
yeah,
But I think that the album has always been unfairly maligned, and
I
I
agree.
think that to go back to my original opening point, I think that this remix just validates this album. You know, if there was one downside to the album, the original mix of the album, um, just deep freeze. Ken Downing doing the with his guitar. It's kind of like, oh, okay, bud. It's just a bunch of noise. But the remix of even that keeps my attention in a way that the original didn't. So that might be the one exception where I might actually rate that higher because I think the remix just makes it more interesting to listen to. Um,
Can I
the
ask
rest
you?
of,
Can I ask
yeah,
you a question about
yeah.
so as deep freeze in my view has always been just a kind of a precursor or a segue into winter retreat.
Mhm.
Do you hear that sequence differently now because of the way you view Ken's, I'll call it a
Yeah,
soul, but it's
yeah,
just a candy bar, what a
yeah. I do,
now, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, I do. That's the one part of the album. Okay, let me be clear about this. The whole album is elevated sonically. In terms of do I like the songs any better? No, because I actually really always loved those songs, the whole album start to finish. With the exception of Deep Freeze, it was kind of like, okay, Ken's just kind of, doing his thing for, what is it, a minute and a half or whatever, 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you get
Brian,
into and then you get into
while
Winter
you stepped
Retreat, but
away,
but
sorry, go ahead.
say, what?
I was going to say, while you stepped away for a minute before we started, I kind of made a little quip about deep freeze, and Brent said he massively disagreed. I said it's basically the FX of the album. If this comparing it to
Oh, I
Volume Four,
disagree. I disagree completely. Yeah.
it sounds like though. Okay, I mean, yeah, FX is just stupid and just noise for the sake of noise, or putting an extra track, or there might have been a contractual thing or whatever. But and okay, yeah, and you guys being guitarists and stuff, I guess you can maybe that has something to do with you appreciating it a little bit more. Yeah, it's kind of moody. It's not so much that that track is in my mind completely stupid,
Hmm.
but I kind of felt like a lot of the that was their way of kind of trying to be a little bit more progressive than they were maybe, have these kind of moody interludes. I did feel a little cheated that Winter Retreat was so short.
Mhm.
I'm like, come on, guys, keep going with that. Like that's a really good song. And then the weird, moody, never satisfied intro when they could have just made it a straight rocking tune, and all the way down to Run of the Mill, Dying to Meet You, and then the Caviar Mess, slaughtering that to an eighth of the length that it was, just to have a little cool outro.
Yeah.
That was kind of an annoyance to me always, which is why it sounds like you might like this album a lot better than I do, but I still love the album and I
Mhm.
listen to it quite a bit. But then going back to what I said, it was mainly only because I had the alternative to listen to that this was my go-to more. Not that I thought this was bad, but
Well, so
sonically and then also arrangement wise was
couple things about that. So back to Deep Freeze. Um, to me, it was always on the original mix. It was always the thing where it's like, I could just kind of skip that. And on this edition, I couldn't because Winter, Deep Freeze, Winter Retreat, and Cheater were all in one track. Obviously, on the new, it's sequenced, with each individual track number. So, you could do that. But I find myself not wanting to skip Deep Freeze. I think the remix of it just, like I said, kind of makes it more palatable. It makes it more of an interesting connection between Winter and Winter Retreat. Then also Winter Retreat, you mentioned it's short, and it is short. In and of itself, it's just more like an interlude piece. It's only about 2 minutes. So really, Winter and Cheater are like these bookends with these segue pieces in the middle. And I love it straight through. And as far as you mentioned side two of the album, the latter half of the record, Run of the Mill, Dying to Meet You. I love those songs. I think that Run of the Mill, the solo section of that is just hypnotic. And it's even more so now because of the remix, I think. Um, I do agree that I think it would have always been pretty cool to have a fuller version of Caviar and Meths. But that isn't the way I heard the album for the first time. So, I'm used to that shorter version of it, and so you know, I'm fine. I'm just stoked that because they always seem to kind of, as a band, they always seem to kind of just ignore this album. It's like, yeah, that doesn't really exist. Almost like they were ashamed of it or something. So the fact
well,
that
it's
they're
very
now out there kind of saying, "Hey, this is where it started, and we're proud of it," I'm really glad to see that. And
it's
Well, and how
kind of
oh, Brent,
Spinal Tap-esque. Sorry.
what is Spinal Tap-esque?
The not that this is like embarrassingly different than the rest of their catalog though, but Spinal Tap, where it's like they're wearing their leather and they're singing about Stonehenge and this and that.
Mhm.
And then it's like, but where did they start? And you see these guys in the suits with the guitars up to
Yeah.
here. Stop wasting my time. That's kind of what, I think of, which obviously Spinal Tap was satirical on a high level. But where you take a look at the leather clad, the studs, the motorcycles or whatever, and you go back and you see a blonde, long hair Rob Halford wearing like, these robes on stage. I think they were all wearing robes. It's very it's not 100% representative of where they were,
Well,
but
I'm
like I
gonna.
said before, is I love the debut. I love to see the evolution,
I,
which is why I never discounted this album. But I can almost see why they're just like, yeah, I mean,
no,
we,
I disagree. I disagree, and I'll tell you why. So for one, obviously, the image. I mean, they didn't have their image really solidified until British Steel. So, and they were playing pre-British Steel stuff. I mean, you go all the way back to Sad Wings, right, with Victim of Changes and Ripper, and so then the question is like, well, is Rocka Rolla really fundamentally that different stylistically to uh the bulk of Sad Wings? And I don't think it really is. Now, someone might prefer Sad Wings, but I mean, Brent, you can tell me, I can't, off the top of my head, Halford's solo band, what live release is that? There's a live release Halford's solo band, they do Never Satisfied. And
I
Hmm.
think it was an official bootleg.
Live
no,
in
it's not a bootleg. No.
Anaheim.
Anaheim,
Mhm.
live Anaheim. And that's got
Roy
and
Z.
Roy Z's playing with them and stuff. And it's like that is crushing. It's like these songs they're not heavy in the modern sense because it's it's early 70s, right? If you I mean listen to Tyrant on Sad Wings, listen to Victim of Changes on Sad Wings. They don't sound all that heavy really by comparison to Painkiller or whatever. And to your point about the Al Atkins album, one of the reasons why I think I always preferred Rocka Rolla to Sad Wings is because most of the songs from Sad Wings I find other versions of I prefer, stuff like on Unleashed in the East and stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's like if I wanted to hear Rocka Rolla songs, Rocka Rolla was all I had, because I didn't have the Al Atkins album, for example.
I got to piggyback off what you said a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's remember though, this is 1974,
Hmm.
and those songs I'm going to say are heavy for 74.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is that this album, I agree. There's like Last Rose of Summer off Sin After Sin, which is similar to some of the stuff off the first two Priest albums. So they've always done things like that, or they did early in their career. But I would use the word melancholy, and I would use the word even beautiful to like Caviar and Mess is a beautiful song. It's incredibly awesome now, especially now with the remix and the remastering. But the debut album is so melancholy too. It's
Yeah.
so and that kind of goes with it being dark. It's so moody, and it's even moodier now in my view because of the work that was just done on it. I think it's incredible. It it's more impactful, I think now. I always liked the record a lot. I don't think I ever liked it as much as you did, Brian, but I think it's more impactful now because of what they did to it.
Yeah.
And then you wonder, gee, like what if Kiss would do something for their 50th anniversary of their debut album, or because we now know what a 74 album remixed and remastered can really be like. And this is like maybe this is what they always wanted it to be.
So here's a question for you guys. Obviously, it goes without saying that Sad Wings of Destiny far surpasses Rocka Rolla in terms of like fan appreciation, notoriety. I mean, it's just so much more well known. And it does sound better. The mix, the original mix of Sad Wings is, I mean, who's going to really argue with it? But
Well, but not by a lot though. I
I
always
was
thought the set. Okay, go
go
ahead.
ahead because you know where exactly where I was going. Yeah.
Well, I always thought, okay, so I mentioned 98 Live Meltdown was my first Judas Priest album. Okay.
Hmm.
And the one that stood out most was Victim of Changes. I liked, a lot of that album. And but anyway, going back, I was like, all right, I gotta get Sad Wings of Destiny. And I got it and I put it on and I'm going like, what's going on here? The mix was not a lot better than rock and roll. That's just kind of what I was getting at.
So,
And
so I got a question for you on that
okay,
then. Given how well received this remix of Rockarola is, would you guys like to see a remix of Sad Wings of Destiny?
100%,
I
100%,
agree. I agree.
1000%.
And the fact that they both were originally on Gull Records and they now apparently have, they've whatever the legalities are, they've secured the rights to the stuff, whatever. Do you think it's possible? Do you think it's likely that we'll see a Sad Wings companion to Rockarola in this format?
I'm
Maybe
surprised they haven't announced it already.
I wouldn't hold my breath because Priest they've never slighted Sad Wings. They used to slight Rockarola. They didn't like the album cover. Like you said earlier, they kind of distanced themselves from the record. I think they look at Sad Wings and they view that as perfection. So I don't know if they would mess with something that they think is already that great. So I'm not. I'm going to think there's never going to be any treatment of that album the way there is of this one for that reason. That's my opinion. That's all it is. Just how I feel about it, based on what they've said in the past.
Yeah, I mean, we'll never know until until the because that's a 76 release. So if they did an anniversary, we got 2 years to find out. But
They
you
gotta.
know,
They gotta.
I frankly I'd love to see it. And I've always been of the frame of mind that if for whatever reason if you did prefer the original mix, it's still there. I mean, even on Spotify, you can. I mean, I was A-Bing this using headphones on Spotify because I was like going back and forth, track one on both albums, track two on both albums, and it's undeniable the how much better this is. Get the glare.
I don't
Uh,
care for the packaging. I think the digipack is kind of chintzy. I don't like the poster fold out with the lyrics,
okay,
but
let's do
I'm
that.
always I'm always an advocate of the because I like Travis. I have the original bottle cap cover. I've had that. I don't know how long I've had that, a very very long time. But the picture's great. I give them up for the
But you
picture,
don't
but I'm not a
don't
fan
like
of the. I don't like the poster kind of inserts. I like a booklet better. I don't know what you
yeah.
guys. But
I
I'm not.
Well, I was disappointed that they didn't have a lot more, background and quotes and, like, Rob, what do you think about this now? I mean, they pulled out Rocka Rolla a couple years ago, didn't they? Judas Priest
the song
live.
did
Yeah.
they?
I,
Mm,
Not that I'm aware of, but
Never Satisfied. They did that in recent tours. I'm not sure if
yeah,
they did. Yeah.
I'm gonna try to
well,
look this up
yeah, we'll
while
have to double check. But to your
It would
point,
have been cool if Rob would have been like, made comments about the tracks, something like that, give it a little bit more, comments on the songs or whatever. But yeah, the packaging leaves a little bit to be desired.
yeah,
second
and
second thing, 2022, Austin, Texas, March 20th, Rocka Rolla,
oh
Judas
wow.
Priest. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to see if I can find some video of that because I've always wanted to hear that song live. I absolutely love the title track. Um, I refer to the guitar that is like a goose honk guitar. It just sounds like this goose honking at you. It's like I've always loved that. But so I'm gonna have to see. I'll see if I can dig up a live version of that. You said it was 2022, right?
Yeah, if you just type in Judas
Yeah.
Priest Rock and Roll Alive, it's the
Yeah.
second thing that comes up in Google.
I agree with you guys. I would have been cool to have more information in terms of like a track by track thing. I think that would have been better. Um, I also think as far as this goes, if the disc itself had been in a one of those like polyline or whatever they're called, the polymer sleeves, whatever
Mm.
that substance is,
Like they did for
help,
the Sabbath set.
yeah, to protect that from the cardboard. Um,
I've never had a problem with it scratching though. I've got countless ones of those. I don't know.
So here's a thing. You guys are talking about the original Bottle Cap album cover. Brent, you said that the band never really liked that cover. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I think wasn't there originally like some concern that they might get sued by Coca-Cola back in the day
I
over,
believe that's also correct. Yeah.
okay. Now
Man comes
this
prepared.
cover, this cover, I'm just gonna do a little bit of
It's a
side
stapler, by the way.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So, like, like Travis was kind of detouring a little bit for a purpose with the Al Atkins thing. I'm going to do a little bit with this. So, the original album cover, do you guys know who did that album cover?
I do, but I forgot. Well, as soon as you give me the name,
Well, his name is Melvin Grant,
that's right. There it is.
and he also did this, the Hero Hero compilation. Okay. But do you know what else he did? Are you ready?
What else? Oh, wait. Oh,
Oh,
no.
yeah.
He did Fear of the Dark by Maiden. He did Maiden's Virtual 11. He did Maiden's Death on the Road, and he also did Maiden's Final Frontier album covers, and he also did one of the another Maiden compilation cover as well. So I just thought that was an interesting side note. But I actually prefer that you can't say original album cover because it's not, but I guess for most American fans, this would have been what we would have thought of as the original cover if you didn't know, because this was really obscure. Like Travis, you said it was hard to find a version
Yeah.
with the bottle cap, right? So to me, that's like the first thing I ever saw. I didn't see this image until much later. So in some ways, I prefer this. To me, the album sounds more like this cover represents this kind of darker, colder kind of thing. Um, but I love the fact, like you said, for history's sake, I like having that because it's what the original album originally was. Yeah. So if you had to grade this remix, what would you say? Being a teacher.
You caught me by surprise there. I wouldn't. Well, oh wait, I'm just grading the remix, not
Yeah,
the
just
album.
no, there's just the
Oh
remix.
my God. Easy A. I don't know.
A
Probably an
plus.
A plus, but
Yeah.
no lower than an A average.
See, I'm
Yeah.
I'm gonna I'm gonna go if I were to grade this, of course, we're not really applying like a rubric like we would if we were actually in the classroom, but I'm gonna say like 99.9%. I mean, it's A
Oh yeah.
plus. There's just that little bit I think with I think maybe a hair too much reverb on the snare on One for the Road. Other than that, I really nothing about this bothers me at all in the least. I'm this uh is one of the releases of the year. And if this was a new release, like a brand new album, it'd be up there, possibly for album of the year.
It's like, how
So
could it get any better? It's
I
like,
don't know.
Yeah.
it's pretty much flawless. It,
Yeah.
it's it's unbelievably good. I mean, I'm to the few people that I know that also like the band who haven't heard this. I'm just telling them, I'm just this is incredible. I mean,
Well,
it's
it'll be interesting, Brent, if you start, rating the Priest catalog, how it ends up comparing to some of the other albums. I'm very curious myself because I think a lot of Priest fans would put it near the bottom in terms of the overall catalog. I don't think I ever would have. And I think it's inconceivable that I would put it near the bottom now with this remix. Um, I
I
do
can
have,
tell
I,
you
and
flat
I do,
out.
I have an idea of what Priest album would be near the bottom, and I think Travis would probably disagree with me on it. So we can
I
save that for
know
another conversation, though.
I know
Well,
there's what's at the bottom for me. So, but yeah, I look
well,
forward to
just
that.
no. Let's just hey, spoiler right now. I'll tell you my bottom 100%. Oh,
Well,
you're waiting for me?
I
I'm
can
giving
tell
you
you,
a clue here.
I can
Okay.
tell you,
Jugulator.
Go
Jugulator.
ahead. Sorry, we're gonna get some
I was
delay. All
giving
right,
you
let's
I
hear
was
what
giving
you
you a
guys say.
clue. Yeah, jugulator.
No
Now,
question, no
to be
question.
fair, we'd have to do our rating system, at least on my end, to apply it to make
Yeah,
sure. But
I'd have to do that.
it's inconceivable that any other Priest album would. I think that album is just horrid. But anyway, we can talk more about that at another time. You think what would be your least favorite, Travis?
Like I'm Nostradamus, which I actually like that song, but that's literally the beginning and the end of the album. I am Nostradamus.
Oh man, that
Yeah,
that
I tell you what, that album is a snooze fest. So
but it's
you
better
you
than Jugulator.
well, we'll find out when we do. We'll have to do some episodes on the Priest catalog, but for now, and it goes to show an album like this, a remix like Rocka Rolla. I mean, look what it's doing. It's making us consider the entire Priest catalog and like where does it fall in the whole grand scheme of things, and that's what a great band and great albums I think do is they get us to see the history of the development of that band. So yeah,
Well, it's like listen to like the new, energized rock and roll and then put on Invincible Shield and like think, okay, here we're
yeah,
50 years between and these guys are still cranking this stuff out. How
right,
cool is that?
yeah,
Would have been a good thing to do. I wish I would have thought of that. Go Rockarilla to Invincible Shield because I mean we all love Invincible Shield. You
yeah,
know,
Yes.
yeah.
yeah.
I mean it
It's a
was
contender. It's a contender for album of the year for me.
yeah
So yeah,
it was shocking how much I loved it. I guess it shouldn't have been because I'm blanking the one before that I love, but we
Firepower.
all talked about this already. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, firepower. I was shocked. But yeah, that's actually, man, I want to do that now. Listen to it
Yeah.
back to back. Or actually, what might be more interesting is track one, and then kind of
Oh
go
yeah.
back and forth and just, I don't know. It's, yeah, I lost my train of thought actually.
That's all right. But the point is like Brent, I think you're making a good point. It's like to listen to this fresh remix of Rocka Rolla and then to listen to the newest album, which of course came out earlier this year, Invincible Shield, and kind of go, well, this is where it starts, this is where they're at now. And just to think of the vast, you know, stuff all in between. It's just really it's just cool. I think it's a cool time to be a fan of these bands as they're getting into these later years and to be able to really consider the big vast histories that they have. Um, you know, I think in that sense we've been kind of lucky to have grown up in the era, that we have. Of course, I think
Absolutely.
anybody's going to say that about whatever era they grow up in, but whatever. So,
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. We are definitely lucky. I mean, 50 years. It's like when you listen to that first album, there's also a little bit of naivete on there. It's
oh
like
yeah.
but it's great. It's just like these guys are figuring
Well,
out who they are, what they're going to do, and you think about all the great stuff they would go on to do, but they haven't done it yet. They don't even
yeah.
know that they're going to do it yet when they
Well,
record
and
this
let's
stuff.
not forget, Glenn Tipton thought this was going to be his first and last Judas Priest album. He was brought on pretty late into the project, and I think he's been on record being like, he's like, yeah, I just wanted a paycheck. I
Well,
had no reason to think that it was
I
going to work out.
I think you're right, and I mean I think he only has writing credits on the title track Rocka Rolla, and
Run of the
I
mill.
think it's Run of
Run
the
of the mill,
Mill.
I think.
Yeah, Run of the
Yeah.
Mill. Other than that, it's mostly Ken, right?
Which
So
it's kind of funny. I knew he had two writing tracks. I couldn't remember which ones. And as I was listening to the new mix of Cheater, that one all of a sudden I go, this one, I'd listened to it a million times before, but I go, this one kind of sounds like the Flying Hat Band, which was Glenn Tipton's previous band. And I'm
mhm,
going, did he have a co-writing credit on this? I don't remember seeing that. I think I would have remembered that, and he doesn't. It's just
mm-mm.
kind of crazy that have you guys heard of the Flying Hat Band?
I don't know if I ever have heard any of
I don't think I've ever actually
Tipton's
heard them.
pre
I
priest.
I think they did. I don't know if it was a split album or it was an EP, but I think they had four tracks that are out there.
Okay.
And Glenn Tipton was the vocalist. Yeah, pretty good vocalist, but he didn't like stand out necessarily. But my favorite song of theirs is I think it's just called Hallelujah or something like that. But it's very early 70s sort of classic rock sounding. So yeah, look it up. And hey, and while you're at it, look this up. He's got some other ones, some other
Mhm.
good albums too.
Yeah.
And while we're at it, can we send a message out to Ian Skull Hill? Like,
Yeah. What do you want to say to
apparently
him?
you're,
Hopefully he's
well, I want to
listening.
say, apparently you're not that bad at writing music.
He is he
I
is
can't remember what's that?
he has two writing credits, Caviar and Meths and
Is it Winter?
Winter. Yeah, Winter.
So I don't know if that means that's his riff, but it's like, Ian, write some more stuff,
I
dude.
know. Well, and the only other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only other thing he ever wrote or has a writing credit for in Priest is Invader on Stained Class. So the
Oh
two writing
wow, I didn't
credits,
even know. Okay.
yeah,
Yep.
the two writing credits on Rock Rolla and then Invader. That's it for him for writing credits. But I think he's
Um,
addressed that. I think he's said I'm just not much of a that's just not my thing, but
Yeah, he's like the most happy-go-lucky guy, I think. Maybe him and Mick Box, although I mean Mick Box does a lot of writing, but they have reputations of just being like, all right, yeah, whatever,
yeah,
cool. Let's just get
yeah.
done. Like when I've told you before, now this is way off topic, but the first time I saw Uriah Heep with 50 other people,
Hmm.
the entire band was miserable. Bernie Shaw was miserable. Trevor Bolder, he would unfortunately die within a year of that show. Russell Gilbrook, he was yelling and cussing off stage. He was having sound problems, and Mick Box is over there like, it's like, all right, this is a lot of fun. So I
So
don't know.
are
Ian
you
Hill strikes
saying,
me as the same type of guy.
yeah, so Ian Hill is like the Mick Box of Judas Priest, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've met Ian Hill, and he comes across that way, so
Yeah.
Are there hand claps in this new cheater? Are there hand claps in cheater? Next time you listen to that, see if you can see if you hear any detect any hand clap.
I'll take another listen gladly.
I think there are. I think there are, which
Okay.
I don't think I've ever heard in the originals if it's what I'm
I
hearing. And
will
were they
I
there and
will
they just mixed in, or were they just low in the mix? It's just there's these little Easter eggs, or
Mhm.
whatever that you come across when you hear this record. It's like you're hearing things for the first time. It's really cool.
I don't recall I don't when I was listening to it, I don't recall thinking, "Oh, I hear hand claps." But now that you say that, I'll have to go back and listen to it because sometimes those things surprise you. You know, when somebody else points something out to you and then it's like, "Oh, wait a minute. I never zeroed in on that before." So I, I have just yet another reason to go listen to it yet again. So I'm going to
Yeah,
do
because
that.
you might have heard it, but you might not see. When I heard that, I thought, I think I'm hearing hand claps. And you might have heard it, but thought, well, maybe that's just something
Yeah.
percussive, or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think hand claps in there. So yeah, you're gonna have to listen to it
Well,
another time.
that's why we do these conversations because it's not, to us it's just not enough to just listen to an album or a band and like it. It's like we gotta pick each other's brains. So um anyway, I don't know. I feel like I've kind of said my piece on Rocka Rolla. Great. I always thought it was a great album. I think it's a fantastic remix. Um I got nothing else to say. So I'll
I
leave
think
it.
my only kind of last thought I was thinking was, we did our big episode on the Forbidden remix.
Hmm.
With that one, I was a lot more nitpicky because, I mean, Black Sabbath is my number one band by far. Forbidden, I've listened to countless times. I already said, I kind of stopped listening to this as much. And that may, paint the picture of why I put this at an A. I don't have any criticisms, whereas, Forbidden, I did just because that was so much like deeper, in my heart, that album. So I can
Hmm.
pick out those nuances. But either way, this is an amazing time where we can have remixes like that breathe new life in. Even though I was not the most critical of the original Forbidden remix, it's still amazing to hear that which is a vast improvement. This one, vast improvement. What a time we live in. I just have to figure out. I don't know. That's my
Right.
one thing right there.
Yeah. Brent, you get the last thought, and
I,
then
I'm
and
just
then I'll close this out.
I was almost speechless I wasn't sure what to expect because I only listened to a couple tracks online before I got the album. And when I played it for the first time, I really couldn't believe what I was hearing coming out of my speakers. It blew me away. I'm like, this is just, it's so different, but it's still the same, if that
Mhm.
makes any sense. It's
Mhm.
like, it just, one of the first comments I made is like, it's like a new record, but it's 50 years old. And
Yeah.
it's perfect. I absolutely love it. Yeah, and I like this record more now than I did before because of the remix. So
Mhm.
I'm really glad they did it. I think it's awesome.
Fair enough. All right. Like I said at the very beginning, we write and record stuff, part of a creative project called Underlords of the Overworld. And we just put out a new single, a song from a forthcoming album. The album's called Lottery of Your Life. The song is called Lottery of Your Life. It sounds nothing like Judas Priest. The song itself is actually kind of a happy-go-lucky sort of thing. Um, but we'll put a link down below. It's available on Spotify if anybody is still with us and they want to check out that. The whole album that we're putting out doesn't sound like it. It's a pretty diverse little record, but um, at any rate, if you're still with us and you want to check out our stuff, that's cool. We'd really appreciate it. If not, that's cool too. And if you have thoughts about the Judas Priest remix. We'd like to hear what you have to say. Put, comment down below, like and subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to us if you want to. We'd like to interact with people about all this stuff that we love. So that's about it, isn't it, guys?
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. Until next time, thanks for watching.